so no one may have ever heard this beautiful singing and music again. And I thought, how precious this is. It captures a time and place, but also just beauty in music and singing. And so to me, it was really important to just kind of bookmark their existence and their music in history. I did a search online before I started this little project, and there wasn't a single mention of Rafu Mandolin Club. And now there's one. And I found the family members were really grateful and appreciative of my making this little film, and they're showing it to the grandkids and to everyone, say, this is what we did, or this is what Grandpa did, or something. And there's so much in our Japanese-American culture, post-war and even during the war, that needs to be preserved, and I hope to keep preserving some of these stories as I go along making small films like this.
Oh no, all 5 of the climbers are still living. Although that one RJ Secor who came along with us because he was an expert, which he was, he had a major accident, and I think he just got his driver's license back, maybe about a couple years ago. He was in a coma. He slipped down Mount Baldy, I believe. But we're all still alive and kicking. So I was 29. Well, thank you. 29. I mean, we all know, right? We all know there are certain things that, well, when you can't hardly believe some of the things that you did when you were young, right? As far as the physical part. And then now you can hardly get in the car or something like that. But, yeah. Actually, there was another party that did go up there. They took a helicopter. And they hiked 2.5 hours to the top. And the plaque that we put up there, I put a brass plaque up there, is still there. So they were able to see it.
Well, they were the first ones to do this climb. The reason they're the first ones to do it is this mountain is located in such a remote area. You can't get to that mountain except if you take a pontoon plane like they did, or take a boat to that area. It's just, there's no roads or anything. And so that's why they had to take a pontoon plane. And also, like, they were the first ones to climb that mountain, so there were no trails or anything. And Steve said that, well, you could tell him yourself, Steve, that if they'd known how difficult it was, they would not, it's possible that they wouldn't have even attempted the climb and everything. And,
at 29, you can do anything.
Ignorance is bliss.
As Steve said, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, that whole area, it's what's called a temperate rainforest. And the vegetation in the temperate rainforest is much more than in a tropical rainforest. It's so thick. Well, he said that, they would be walking along, they wouldn't be walking on the ground, they would be walking on the dead trees and all the vegetation and everything, and then every now and then they would fall through it. And so that's why it was so difficult to do the hike and everything. So it's quite a special place that's really remote and very primitive.
Well, the 100th year of Canadians, they had a commemoration, so they said, let's do something monumental. And so they petitioned the government saying, how about naming a mountain after a first immigrant? And the government was amenable to that, and they went ahead and named it. It is one of 2 mountains outside of Japan that's named after a Japanese. The other one is in Alaska. The Canadian camp experience was much harder. There were no set up camps like that. In many cases, they were put into the old living quarters that the people who built the railroads. And some places there was higher security, equivalent to maybe our Santa Fe or Bismarck or Fort Sill camps. And in those camps, any male over 18 had a target on their back. But all the other camps were kind of like you were thrown out there in the wilderness and you had to deal with on your own. Interesting, my great-grandfather lived in Victoria. And we went there in the late 70s, and we had a tour. In Victoria, they had Japanese schools, they had orphanages, they had houses of ill repute. These are all Japanese, the Japanese community. Then the war broke out, everything was taken away, and then after the war, not one single Japanese Canadian moved back to Victoria. I mean, so the Issei weren't able to get citizenship, and then the ones who were born in Canada had their citizenship taken away. They had, of course, their property pretty much like ours, but they were put in places that very desolate, isolated places, and many of them had to like just fend for themselves.
They didn't all come back right away. They were just scattered throughout Canada. And then so the Canadian Japanese, they kind of lost their, the communities because they weren't all back together. And like, in this country, they start coming back to California right away and everything. But they didn't in Canada. And then so there's this reporter, what's his name, Steve? Toyo Takada. Anyway, he started researching. He thought it was very important to have a centennial celebration of the first immigrant to Canada, and so he was the one that started to read. He was a newspaper man, and so he did research to find the first one that migrated from Japan to Canada, and so he's the one that came up with Manzo, and then so that was kind of a rallying point to have this centennial celebration to bring the Canadian Japanese back together again.